Hi, Julia Barzyk here from Wise Investigator. Today I am going to share with you an overview of the Department of Defense Early Career Award programs. Now, I am going to base this information off of my own experience serving as a program manager at the U.S. Army Research Office. I was there for about 10 years, making recommendations for early career awards, and since then I've also worked with clients, supporting them to win some of these awards. So let's get started, because I get a lot of questions about the early career awards like YIP and others. So let's get started with those. Okay. Now, what are the programs that are available? Well, first of all, they are available through the services. So these are the basic research offices of each of the services: AFOSR, ARO, and ONR. And through each of these, there is either a Young Investigator Program, which is what it's called at AFOSR and ONR, or the Early Career Program, which is what it's called at ARO. Further, there is a Young Faculty Award that is available at DARPA. So these are the ones you've probably heard of. Okay, so I am going to walk you through this table here, which is based on the most recent information that we have available. I am recording this video in early April of 2025. And so keep in mind that these dates and information on here, actually almost really all the information, could definitely be changing. So this is to help orient you where we are now, roughly what you can expect, but you've got to look at the current information for all of this information so you can be up to date. All right. So with AFOSR, there is a proposal due date. We do not know when that is going to be this year because the opportunity hasn't been announced yet. It's generally been in the spring or summer timeframe. There is a pre-proposal that is required, and this they call a white paper. It's effectively a pre-proposal type document, and that will have a due date. That's going to be a couple months before the proposal is due. As of right now, we don't know when that would be. For PI eligibility, again, this is the most recent information we have, but you are going to want to check very carefully to ensure that you're eligible for the opportunity. So all of these on this slide do require U.S. citizen, national, or permanent resident. So that stays consistent for these, but you do need to pay attention to the number of years that you're going to be out from your PhD or the number of years that you've been in your tenure track position. So for AFOSR, you're going to expect to receive $450K over 3 years. So it's a generous award. And you, in the last year that announcements were made, there were 48 winners that were announced, and they had received 159 applications. So if you do make it through the white paper or pre-proposal stage, you do have fairly good odds to get awarded this YIP. Now, let's move on to ARO. So with ARO, what's called the Early Career Program, it is different than the schedule and how the program is managed at AFOSR and ONR. What's different about it is that the due date is effectively rolling, like the other programs at ARO that are single investigator, making single investigator and other types of awards out of what we would call a core program. The early career program is actually just incorporated into that. So when I say it's rolling, that means there's not a hard deadline, but you definitely should be in touch with the program manager who is going to give you guidance on when they would need or want that proposal in. So it doesn't mean that it's a good idea to just submit it at any time of year. You're going to want to have guidance on when the best time to submit that would be. A pre-proposal is not required. However, that does not mean that you should not be running the idea in the form of a white paper and or discussions by the program manager. It just means it's not required. Again, you can read the eligibility here, and in this case, it's the smallest in terms of the dollar amount of these awards. You're going to get $360K over 3 years. And we do not have data on how many early career award applications were submitted and how many were won. And this is because generally ARO does not have a big announcement as these are made throughout the year. And as the funds for the early career program come from the core funds of each program manager, they are not they're not made into a cohort or a big announcement, although of course you do see press releases from an institution when one of their faculty wins an early career award. You'll see that, but you generally don't see a release coming out from DOD or from the Army about a group of people who won these awards. So it's important to point out that this program is different because again, since these awards are made just through the core programs of the program manager, what is required generally beyond what is required for a regular single investigator type award is the chair letter. And besides that, there's really, again, check the requirements each year, but generally there is not really anything else required. So if you were talking to a program manager about an idea that could be a good fit for their program and you meet these eligibility criteria and you can keep your budget to just $120K per year for 3 years, then, and you don't have any collaborators either, right? You shouldn't have collaborators on the early career award proposal. If you meet those criteria, you very well could have your proposal processed and then awarded as an ECP award. So that's a really exciting opportunity if that fits for you without going through the same kind of group process that is going to happen at AFOSR or ONR. You'd be considered more of a one-off. It would be more of a one-off decision. Maybe that's a good way to say it. Okay, so for ONR, we don't know when the proposal is going to be due. It's the last 2 years, the date was different. It was in the spring and then it was in the summer. So keep in mind that that's been the cycle, but we don't know what it is going to be this year. And there is not a pre-proposal or a white paper required, but I definitely recommend that you're in touch with the program officer and you've run that idea by them, you've gotten feedback on a white paper, and they've indicated that this could be a good fit for the YIP. So take a look at the eligibility criteria, but again, that's very important to check each year, especially related to these dates. And this is the one where you really do get quite a bit more money. You get $750K over 3 years. And in the most recent year that the announcements were made, 24 were awarded and they got some more than 230 submissions. So you can see the difference here that it is a lot lower acceptance rate, and I'm certain that that's because with AFOSR, the white paper is required, so they're able to weed out some topics that are not good fits, and then in the case of the ONR YIP, that's not happening, so a lower proportion of the proposals are accepted. All right, so moving on, we are going to talk about the DARPA Young Faculty Award. Again, check the dates, but this year it was due in February, the proposal, and there is not a pre-proposal that's required, but please consider it to be required for yourself, even if it's not required for the organization. It is strongly encouraged, and I am strongly encouraging you to submit an executive summary and get that feedback. So take a look here for PI eligibility. The important thing to note here is you do not have to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident to apply and win this award. So that's exciting. You are going to be looking at $500K over 2 years, and it was announced that 30 were won in the most recent year. We don't have information on how many were submitted. And also important to note about this one is that you can get a third year of funding. That's called the Director's Fellowship. And this is different than the Basic Research Awards that I showed you on the last slide, because this is more of a mentorship program. So you will be working with and checking in with on a regular basis the DARPA program manager throughout the duration of the award. Now, a very important thing to tell you here, and if this sounds like some kind of inside information or something that I shouldn't be sharing, that's not true. It's totally not, because I actually got this information directly from the mouths of DARPA program managers at a DARPA Connect event just about a year ago. So what you want to keep in mind here is that around March, again, assuming that we stay on this time frame where the announcement comes out in the fall and then the proposals due around February, assuming we stay on that calendar, you want to be talking to the program managers and CETAs, and I'll explain who they are, around the March timeframe, because this is the time of year when they are considering what topics to post. And you can run your ideas by them. You're not doing anything wrong by sharing an idea, and perhaps they build on that idea over the months before the announcement is made, and maybe that idea works its way into one of the topics. So this is a totally fair and good thing to do. And it really demonstrates the point that they are telling you, not just me, but we are all telling you that you really want to be in touch with people ahead of time and get feedback on ideas and even share some ideas with them so that they may even consider building a topic off of your idea. That doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily win it, because they're not going to post a topic if they think that only one PI in the entire United States could submit for it. It's going to be something that they think they'd like to get ideas from a number of different teams on. So it's totally fair. It's a good idea, and they have told people to go ahead and do this. Now, I want to point out something about these people called SETAs, and they're called SETAs. It's SETA, Science, Engineering, Technical Assistance, I believe is what it stands for. But they're always just called SETAs. And I was a SETA even for some time before I was hired into a federal position at ARO. Now, in the case of DARPA, these SETAs are contractors, but they work very closely with the program managers, and these are generally PhD level people. They're providing technical guidance to the program managers, and they may be more available to consult with you than the program managers. So if you, in your efforts to reach out to the program managers, you run into these people called SETAs, talk to them. They are very well connected with the program managers, and although they're not federal employees and they're not the one who's signing to make that official recommendation, they are very plugged into what's going on there. So definitely don't want to ignore these people or think, oh, they don't have any authority. Just treat them as you would a program manager, and realize that they're a really great resource and they may be more available to you. All right, so if you do approach DARPA, you are going to want to be familiar with the Heilmeier Catechism. I am not going to go through all of this here and talk you through this. You can just very easily Google this. If you are not familiar with this, then become familiar with it before you approach the DARPA PM. That'll be pretty quick and easy for you to do. All right, so I want to point you to a resource, and this is a Google Doc that I will link to below in the description. And I keep this as up to date as I can. It's just a simple table that provides basic information for these DOD programs as well as the other major federal early career programs. And I provide links. And again, I update this as new announcements come out and as we get new information. So that's a handy place for you to look for the information in one place as you consider these early career programs. I want to make a point here that this is about the letters. I'm going to talk about this also a little on the next slide, but I did not want to forget to let you know that I do have a video that I can also link to, and this is about letters, because very often in proposals there are letters required, and you're probably familiar with the letters that can be required by NSF. And in fact, NSF, in order to, I believe the reasoning behind it is to make things more fair, is they have boilerplate requirements for some of these letters of support and other types of letters you need, so that the author of the letter is not elaborating on anything. They're just saying, yes, these resources will be available, or yes, this is a new faculty member in our department in good standing, or whatever the case may be. Now, with Department of Defense, you do not want to assume that these letters are just going to be boilerplate, or that they're just something you're going to pull together at the last minute. The chair letter can be very important. So keep that in mind and check out the video on letters if you want a deeper dive into the letters. All right, so the considerations that you need to keep track of here when you are considering pursuing these opportunities. I could not recommend more strongly that you are in contact with the program officer or the program manager as soon as you think you may want to be pursuing one of these opportunities. Now, I can't say that if you submit a proposal blind, which means you don't have any contact with them and you just come up with something on your own, do a good job on that, submit it, and that in theory, that could be supported. And I'm sure someone out there could give me an example of somebody who did this and won a YIP, for example, but it is going to be extremely rare, and I absolutely do not recommend it. So just don't submit if you haven't been in touch with someone at all. It's just not a good idea. It's not a good use of your time. It's the chance you're going to get it is very low. Again, it's non-zero, but it's quite low. So keep in mind also that the funding levels, except for O&R, are generally not much greater than a core or single investigator award. So if you are feeling down because you are not yet a permanent resident and you are not eligible for 3 out of these 4 awards, or you feel that there's some other reason that this is not a fit for you, you do not need to be depressed about that, because yes, it is very prestigious to win one of these awards, and it's more recognized in certain fields than others. Certainly in engineering, where DOD is a huge player, then you may be receiving more credit, from your institution and your tenure and promotion process, that you won this big award, and that's bringing a lot of glory, to you and the organization. So I understand that you may want to go after these very prestigious awards. But, and now I have a caveat because I'm not on faculty hiring committees, I'm an expert in funding, I'm not an expert, again, from a faculty hiring committee or a promotion and tenure committee. But I can assure you, nevertheless, that if you have funding from one of these organizations, a $400K, something like that, and it's just a single investigator award from a, quote, core program, that is going to be looked upon very favorably. Trust me, people are not going to care that it was not a Young Investigator Award or an Early Career Program Award. If you got that funding and you're doing the research and you've got a good relationship with the program manager, that's awesome. It does not matter if it's not a named award. So just go for the funding, and if you fit and it makes sense and you're encouraged to go for one of the early career awards, then go for it. Again, I'm not anti these awards. We've supported clients to win these awards, so I'm not against them. But I just am on this little soapbox here because I see and talk with so many PIs who are fixated on these opportunities, and they're missing all the other opportunities where in some cases you might even get more money because the ARO award only goes to $360. Okay, so now consider if you should have a DOD collaboration going on before you submit for this, or if you might propose that. And this is going to vary highly by program manager or program officer. There are going to be some program officers that tell you, you do not need any DOD collaboration. I'm not interested in this. This is really basic research focused. You're going to have a paragraph in the abstract. You're going to have a paragraph in the project narrative that will describe how this could be relevant to Navy or Air Force or whatever. But beyond that, they don't want more from you. Now, on the other hand, others might say, yeah, if you're already working with somebody, for example, from Navy, and you can mention that and what that involves in the proposal, and then speak to how you're going to continue that collaboration, that could put you at an advantage. But you are not going to know until you talk to the program officer and you get their feedback on that idea, and you just follow their guidance. Don't follow what I'm telling you here. What I'm telling you is to get to that person and follow their guidance. So that is another one to consider. Now, you definitely want to be focusing on preparing a strong entire package. So we talked a little bit about the chair letter. This is very important. This needs to be written to make you sound like you walk on water. So you need to make sure that you may have to even draft this letter, that you have a chance to get feedback on it from somebody else, that you give your chair enough time to sign the letter, and you want to make sure that this gets the attention that it deserves. Same with CV. When a CV is required, this can be like 20% of the evaluation criteria. You need to check that too to see what aspect of the proposal comprises how much of the evaluation criteria. And a CV is something that you're thinking, oh, I'll just throw that on the end. I've got to worry about the other pieces. Well, then you get to close to the deadline, you're looking at that CV, and it doesn't look good, right? The formatting's off. It's not really been updated. You need to get it onto fewer pages. It's not necessarily going to be just the generic bio sketch that you're submitting here. So each one of these pieces you need to be giving the attention it deserves, because especially in the case of ONR, you're asking for a lot of money. And whenever you're starting to ask for that much money, you really need to be sure about getting this a lot more polished, which moves over to the editing. So you really need to, even if you're a good writer, it should still go through editing process, because again, this is about a package that's pulled together, that's polished, and that's robust in all of the pieces being strong and polished. So do keep that in mind. Give yourself time for that. Now, the most important point that I want to leave you with here is to ask yourself, in this whole process, when you're thinking about all this stuff, these opportunities, the young investigator opportunities, and DOD more broadly, or really any agency, okay, what is the research you want to do? That's what this is all coming down to. So if you are approaching a program officer that you've never met before, and you're asking them, first thing, I'm interested in the YIP. I want to apply for the YIP. It's not a very mature way to approach that conversation. The best way to approach it is to talk about the research ideas. I understand your program is in this. My research is in this area. Could I tell you about it? Could that fit the program? Where do you see your program going? Are you funding anything else that's related to this topic? What is some of the research that's going on in, say, the Navy labs that's related to this topic? Is there anyone I could reach out to there to learn more about what they're doing? These are all much more mature and productive conversation starters than approaching someone and just saying, I want to have the YIP. Because it's kind of like, it's not a perfect analogy, and I say this often, I guess, but if you see someone and you decide that you like them, you find them attractive, you think that they're smart, you've read some of their work, and for some reason you're impressed with them, but you have never really met them, face to face, and then to approach that person and say, I want to get married, right? I'm ready to take that big step. Now, winning a YIP is not equivalent to marriage, right? But you do want to not get ahead of yourself, and you want to start the conversation on appropriate topics. At the end of the day, it comes down to what research you want to do. So if you can get somebody excited about that research, then they're going to be saying to you, how could we make this happen? Would this make sense as a single investigator award? Would it make sense as a YIP? And then they're going to guide you through that. So go ahead and start the conversation about the research, and that's going to lead you to the best results. Because you can let them know, I may be eligible for the YIP for a couple more years, something like that, because if they're going to want you to have that. So they're advocating for you, and they're going to be thinking about how could we help this PI, and how could we help them get into something that's the best fit. And so if the YIP is the best fit for you, then they're going to support that. Okay, so I would like to close here by letting you know about a longer free DOD funding course. So I'm going to link to this below. It covers the topics you can see here. Why you might want to consider DOD funding, the DOD approach to funding, so how that differs from other organizations, going through the funding organizations themselves, talking about the DOD programs, how to search for funding, how to learn what they've funded, how you're going to connect with people at DOD. This is so important. And then how you can implement some of this stuff and take the next steps. So I encourage you to check that out and let me know if this is helpful. Thanks, guys.